Walk into your nearest Asian grocery store, doesn't really matter where you are, go to the tea section and you're likely to find two options: jasmine tea and Tieguanyin. So Tieguanyin is an oolong tea that originates from Anxi County in southern Fujian in China. It's probably the most well-known, most widely available, and arguably the most average type of oolong tea that's out there. Now when I say average, I mean that typically, at least to me anyway, the name Tieguanyin, it's a name that I associate with average, stock standard oolong tea. So it's not a tea that I normally would get excited about, and yet here we are. Tieguanyin is the theme for issue 2 of the Tea Discovery Club. Now our aim with this box is to take what's often considered a stock standard, average, run-of-the-mill style of oolong and shed new light on it, to show just how great and interesting this particular style of tea can be. So back in the day, Tieguanyin was, and in some cases still is, quite a revered style of tea. High-grade versions of this tea can in some cases fetch upwards of $3,000 US per kilo and are quite hard to find. And like most teas, there are a number of myths and legends surrounding its origins. So one such legend takes place in Anxi County in Fujian. A farmer on his daily walk to tend to his tea field passes by an old dilapidated temple that houses a bronze statue of Guan Yin, the goddess of mercy. So lamenting on the poor state of the temple, he took it upon himself to sweep the temple floor every day, keeping the place looking tidy and offering incense to Guan Yin every day on his way to his tea field. So one evening, Guan Yin appeared to the farmer in a dream, telling him of a cave behind the temple that housed a hidden treasure inside. And so on the next day, on his walk to his tea field and on his daily stop by the temple, the farmer ventured further into the temple to the back, where he did indeed find a hidden cave. So venturing in, the farmer discovers a tea shoot growing inside the cave. He took the shoot, took it back to his tea field where he planted it, tended to it until it grew into a fully fledged tea bush, of which the finest tea in the land was made. And his neighbours would come over and ask for cuttings from the tree so that they too could cultivate and produce this amazing tea. And our farmer friend, well, he happily obliged, and soon the region flourished because of this amazing new tea. And with this newfound prosperity, the dilapidated temple was fully restored, and this tea, well, it was dubbed Tieguanyin or Iron Guanyin or Iron Goddess, named after the bronze statue of Guan Yin that was found in this temple in Anxi in Fujian. So when talking about Tieguanyin nowadays, there are three main types, three faces of Guan Yin, if you will. There's the green, traditional, and aged, with a version of each type included in issue 2 of the Tea Discovery Club. So green, as the name suggests, it's a greener, less oxidized version of the tea. Pretty much like the Green Goddess Oolong that I've been drinking in this video up until now. Okay, so this tea, it's aromatic, it's floral, slightly grassy. Like it has some of those like kind of greener notes that you expect to find in a green tea, but that's not the predominant flavor. Like it's definitely those sort of light floral notes. It's definitely what's coming through first, and it's kind of combining and mixing with some of those, like, so as I was saying, those greener notes as well. It's sweet in flavor, and yeah, that sort of light lingering floral aftertaste. It's not bitter. It's less bitter than what you expect, to find in a green tea. So I guess that's the sort of oolong side of this. There's a little bit of a light roasted note, but that's once again not the main flavor that you're getting here. Yeah, it's kind of a combination of like sort of floral and light, slightly grassy. It's a great example of a green Tieguanyin. So traditional Tieguanyin, it's a more heavily oxidized style of oolong tea, and it typically has a heavier bait as well. Now you can see with the leaves here, the difference in color compared to the Green Goddess, the previous Tieguanyin that we just had. The smell of the leaves, the smell of the leaves is quite different as well. Like it's more, like it's definitely got a more roasted note. Like that's the first thing that's apparent. But also it's less of that green, grassy, floral aroma like in the previous Tieguanyin. This one has a slightly more fruity kind of character to it, and also like a light spiciness to it. And when I say light like spice, I mean like a sweet spice, something like a light cinnamon or a light nutmeg kind of aroma. It's really quite interesting, like completely different from the green style Tieguanyin, like those sort of light floral grassy notes. This one doesn't really have that. It's completely different from that. So it's made from the Hongxin Waiweitao cultivar, a pure non-hybrid cultivar that was said to be the original cultivar traditionally used to make Tieguanyin Oolong tea. You could say that it's the same kind of leaf that was blessed by Guan Yin in the cave behind the temple all those, many centuries ago. So many cultivars used to make Tieguanyin nowadays, they're hybrid cultivar, in that cuttings from the pure Tieguanyin cultivar sort of get made and then grafted onto other similar tree stocks such as Huangdan or Benshan. And during the height of Tieguanyin's popularity, most teas that was grown in the region was dubbed Tieguanyin, even though technically it may not have been this sort of pure, sort of non-hybrid cultivar. But this tea here that we've called True Goddess, this is said to be an example of that pure non-hybrid Tieguanyin cultivar. But how important of a factor is it to have the tea, be made from a pure non-hybrid cultivar? I mean, that's debatable. In the end, as long as the tea tastes great, that's all that really matters, right? Yeah, that's pretty different from the green Tieguanyin that we just tried. Like, there's definitely something interesting going on with this tea here. It actually, to me, it actually tastes a little bit almost like a really light rock tea, funnily enough, which, I mean, it's kind of surprising because it's from southern Fujian, like this tea is from southern Fujian, the Tieguanyin, but it's not really that surprising either because both teas are from Fujian. It has a little bit of that sort of mineral characteristic to it, but obviously not as much as a rock tea. And also it's definitely got that sort of toasted grain kind of flavor. Also has I think like a refreshing sort of light fruitiness, something like, once again, I've used this to describe the Buddhist palm in the last issue of the Tea Discovery Club, but like a nashi pear kind of flavor. That sort of light, refreshing fruitiness that was in that oolong is kind of present in this one here as well. And also that sort of light spice note, that sweet spicy note, whether it's kind of like a light cinnamon or a light nutmeg kind of flavor, that is also in it. That's also what I'm tasting as well with this. And the tasting notes and the initial flavors that you get, that's really just a small element of what makes it a great tea. I think the aftertaste, which is something that I've harped on about in pretty much every video on this channel, I think that's a more telling sign about whether the tea that you're drinking, like whether that's a great tea or not. Like for example, when I drink this tea, I take a sip. And so yeah, I'm getting all the flavors, I'm getting all those flavors that I was talking about, getting that aftertaste, but long after I've taken that sip, if I just sit here with that tea, like my senses are they're getting filled with like these subtle aromas of the tea. Like whether you call that aftertaste or huigan or whatever it is, your kind of senses get filled up with the subtle aromas that's inherent within these teas. Like this is something that you get from truly great teas, and it's something that I'm getting from this tea here. The third type is aged Tieguanyin. Any Tieguanyin that's been properly stored for more than 5 years, that's considered aged. I mean, who knew that aged Tieguanyin was a thing? I mean, I think this is kind of a case of old tea that, hasn't been sold and kind of left in storage for years, and then when they kind of dig that out again, discover that the flavors have kind of morphed into something completely different. I mean, I don't believe it's common practice for people to kind of store and age Tieguanyin, like how a lot of people store and age pu'er teas nowadays. And I don't hear of producers or vendors saying that if you take this Tieguanyin and age it for a few years, it's going to turn into something magical. I mean, I might be wrong. Anyone that's had any experience or thoughts that says otherwise, please share it in the comments below. So here I've got two different aged Tieguanyins. Both started off life as a green Tieguanyin. Now the first one is from 2008 and it's been in dry storage for most of that time. Now the second one is from 2000 and it spent part of its life in cold storage. That is, it's been stored in a fridge pretty much for about 14 years in order to try and maintain some of its initial kind of aromatic qualities. The one from 2000 also is an award-winning tea that won the title of Guan Yin King in 2000, and that's a title that's given to the winner and the best tea that was entered into the Anxi Cha Wang Sai competition, which translates pretty much to the Anxi King of Tea competition. Anyway, let's brew these two up and try the two and compare them. So firstly, in general, aged Tieguanyin tastes quite different from the green and traditional styles. Both of these teas have this kind of like, I kind of want to say it's like a roasted pineapple kind of flavor to it. It's really quite intriguing, like it's interesting. It's something that I haven't had, like something that I haven't tasted in a tea before. Yeah, so this one, the 2008 Tieguanyin, it's overall it's a little bit more subtle. It definitely has that sort of roasted pineapple note that I was just talking about, along with this like kind of, it's a very smooth, it's like a sweet, smooth kind of finish. The texture of this tea is very smooth. It's quite thick as well. It doesn't really resemble like what a typical Tieguanyin tastes like at all. Like those floral notes, that sort of floral grassy notes, like those aren't really present anymore, despite this tea having started out life as a green oolong. Plus, this is also a tea that I think really benefits from being brewed, being steeped for a little bit longer than usual. So typically, like when I'm brewing teas, Gongfu style, like I would steep the teas for maybe about 5 to 10 seconds per infusion, and it's perfectly fine. But I think in this case, for this particular tea, it takes a little bit longer, needs a little bit of a longer steep in order to sort of really push like the flavors out and to get a real sense for what this tea is about. So I think, it needs at least, I'd say about 20 seconds or so, maybe even up to about 30 seconds, which I think we've hit at about now. This is definitely a tea that rewards patience and attention. Like it's not a tea that's going to straight away kind of punch you in the face with flavor. Like it's quite subtle, but if you sit with it, and especially with these longer steeps, like if you sit with it for a bit, you get something really interesting. Like you get a really interesting kind of aroma coming back at you. I guess that sort of aftertaste is that sweet aftertaste is slowly kind of returning. But it's something that you need to pay attention to. Like you can't be distracted with it, other things that are going on. But if you do take the time and patience to pay attention to it, you do get rewarded with something that is quite intriguing. Now, this one from the year 2000, this is something else. I think this one definitely benefited from being in cold storage for a period, for a portion of its time. Like with the 2008 Tieguanyin, like it does have those like kind of roasted pineapple and kind of there's also like light kind of spice notes with the tea, like in the 2008 one and in this one as well. But this one seems to have actually retained a little bit, like not completely, but it seems to have retained a little bit of the initial kind of green floral aroma which is kind of surprising given the age of this tea. But like of the two, I do think this one here, they're both great teas and they both have something interesting to offer. But of the two, I definitely find this one from 2000 to be the more interesting and rewarding tea. But I mean, the leaves used to make both these teas are of a pretty high grade. Like they're both high grade Tieguanyins, but I guess only one has been crowned, Guan Yin King. Yeah, but like the 2008 Tieguanyin, it still also benefits from a longer steep. On top of that roasted pineapple, there's also like a kind of almost peach-like flavor as well. Like there's a lot going on with this tea. Like it's quite complex. This particular one, even with the longer steep, doesn't really get that bitter at all. Whereas compared to the 2008 Tieguanyin, that now has kind of turned a little bit more into, like the flavors seem a little bit almost darker, more baked. I don't know whether this tea was perhaps a little bit more baked early on, or maybe it's a result of the storage. But both aged Tieguanyins, very interesting, and definitely teas that you need to kind of pay attention to, and these are teas that definitely reward patience. So it's a little tricky for me to try and be completely objective when it comes to Tieguanyin, because as I mentioned earlier, versions of this tea, like it's so widely available that I've really come to consider it like an example of like kind of stock standard average oolong tea. So I walked into this issue of the Tea Discovery Club, when we're setting it up, like with a little bit of a negative bias, but still decided to kind of go ahead with it because I wanted to see if there are indeed Tieguanyins out there that can change my mind. And well, I think it did. These teas are a far cry from the stuff that you might, try at restaurant, like a typical sort of yum cha restaurant, or the stuff that you find in the supermarket, kind of generic oolong bottled iced tea, that's synonymous with the name, sort of Tieguanyin. Especially with the traditional and the aged versions of the tea in this pack, like those teas have definitely kind of, I guess, opened my eyes to what Tieguanyin actually is supposed to be, or what this type of tea sort of can be. And it's not a category that should be, kind of outright dismissed. Anyway, that's the end of our video today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. Members of the TDC, have you had a chance to try these teas out? What did you think? Did you, like me, have any sort of preconceived notions when it comes to Tieguanyin? And did any of these teas change any of those opinions? And to all you other tea lovers out there, what are your thoughts on Tieguanyin? Like, is it your sort of average, run-of-the-mill, stock standard oolong tea with nothing special to offer? Or is Tieguanyin a gift from the heavens that's blessed by the Goddess of Mercy? Let me know in the comments below, and we'll see you guys in the next video.